And and of course he's the person that would be like, yeah, release the Epstein files because that dirty bastard Trump, blah blah blah, right? Well, Epstein is not sorry, not Epstein. I'm sorry. Summers is actually in the Epstein files himself, right? They released these crazy text messages where this guy was basically like he was texting back and forth with Epstein about like basically how to get a girl like some he I guess he was interested in some mentee. I don't know if it was a grad student or something. And of course he's married and all that, right? Because these things end up happening, I guess. And so this married dude is like hitting up Epstein, and he's basically like asking him for advice on how to get this girl to like him. And Epstein defined himself as Summer's wingman. He said, I'm your wingman," which is like, wow, that's so crazy that the president of Harvard University's wingman was Jeffrey Epstein. And you would think that you would think that this was something that happened before people knew that Epstein was Epstein, right? Before they knew that he was doing dirty stuff and whatever, right? The stuff that he's accused of. But it wasn't. It was actually after. It was actually after he'd been convicted, right? So that makes it even like a double whammy, right? And so here's the thing. I want to talk about it, but I don't want to talk about it from like a gossipy standpoint, right? There's plenty of salacious stuff to get into if that's your thing. I thought about it just from a financial psychology standpoint. I think that there's a missed lesson in Epstein and his all of his shenanigans that isn't discussed in terms of psychological manipulation with money being used as a tool of warfare. Remember, I told you that money is war, right? Economic warfare is very real. Economic manipulation is very real. Happens to black people all the time. Black people that's how they destroyed your culture. That's how they made you think that that's how they made you glorify the drug dealer who gets the whole family hooked on crack and kills people, but they give away turkeys at Thanksgiving, so we think that they're good people. Or they had a hit album and we think somehow that person is a wonderful guy. And so this, so white folks have their own version of this in the Epsteins of the world. And this person who got duped by this is not a stupid man. Lawrence Summers is I mean, let me just say this. Lawrence Summers, agree with him or not, if you know his background, he's a badass. This guy, as far as finance and economics, he's one of the leading thinkers on the planet when it comes to this field. Like, so you would think that this guy, genius level intelligence, a tremendously high level economic thinker, would be the last person on earth to fall for that rope a dope. Where you're kicking it with Jeffrey Epstein, knowing that Epstein is Epstein, right? And again, you can judge it how you want. I'm not here to even do that. What I'm here to really do is help you understand how so many of us, so many of you, so many of us in this room have gone through a similar experience. Many of you have had scenarios where people got up next to you and they were up to no good, but there was something that got you to let your guard down. And this is not there's no exclusion, there's no intelligence exemption to this because this is not about intellect, which Lawrence Summers has plenty of. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about sort of how you view yourself, what matters to you, what are you trying to acquire. And remember, one of the biggest reasons that I talk to you guys about money and explain that all money ain't good money is because when or as Denzel said, Denzel Washington, right after Will Smith went on stage and slapped Chris Rock, he said, right when you're at your peak, that's when the devil shows up. And my interpretation of that statement is that the devil is the dark side. The devil is, your weaknesses or the things that you lust after, the things that you want. Like, so in this case, Lawrence Summers wanted this woman and he wanted the money, right? All these things are dopamine driven. They're like little drugs you're injecting in your veins. So he was a dope addict. He wanted to know, and I don't care how smart you are, drugs will always outsmart you, right? Love will outsmart you. Sex will typically outsmart you. When we talk about gambling addictions, and the reason you got to warn your sons about this, gambling will outsmart you, but you will intellectualize yourself into believing that you're immune to all these things that affect all human beings. But that's a common mistake that a lot of people make. So with that said, before I jump into the economic discussion of what happened between Epstein and allegedly between Epstein and Lawrence Summers. I don't think it's alleged though. I mean, Summers has like stepped back from public appearances and everything. Right? He's literally kind of saying like, yeah, I did it, right? So it's kind of it's not an allegedly thing, and actually makes me think about another really brilliant brother at Harvard named Roland Fryer. He's a black man, and Roland is similar to Summers in that they both won an award in economics that I wanted to win. I didn't win it. I didn't get it. It was called the John Bates Clark Medal, and it goes to the best economists on earth under the age of 40. I didn't win, but those two guys won, and they were at Harvard, and both of them got involved. I mean, really had career damaging situations that involved what? Their penises, sex, right? And for Roland Fryer, his situation was he was running a lab, and apparently he was accused of sexually harassing people that ran the lab, right? And so it's kind of one of those things where you got that old school grandma who's like, "That's what you get for messing with them white women," right? Because I think his wife is white and everything and all this other. But I'm just being silly. But still, like Roland Fryer, they literally did. He didn't just get penalized or punished or shamed. Like they canceled him from Harvard's campus. Like they put him off the campus, from what I understand, and said you cannot come back for 2 years or something. And I think he came because he had tenure and everything. So I think he came back, but I think he lost the lab or lost a lot of funding. He certainly had some reputational damage and stuff like that, which I'm sure was very distressing for him. So here's the thing. Here's what I want to do today. I'm not here to be judgy. I'm not here to tell you that you have to be perfect. I'm not here to pretend like anybody's perfect, but I am here to say, man, there are some deep financial psychology lessons in this Epstein slash Harvard president debacle. It's quite massive, and it goes back to what Denzel said about the devil showing up when you're at your peak. Well, the devil shows up holding your greatest dream. He holds your biggest fantasies in this hand and your greatest dreams in the other. And so if you are a person that dreams without any guardrails, then you're going to be vulnerable to this. This is how Diddy got people to come to the Diddy parties. Like, oh, you want to be a rap star, huh? Well, I know Jay-Z. Hey, Jay-Z's my homie. He's at the house right now. You want to come talk to Jay-Z? Hey, hey, I'm gonna pick you up in the limo, girl, and you can, and there'll be some champagne in the limo, and then you're gonna get on my private jet, and then we're gonna come and have lunch with Jay-Z, and then, girl, I'm going to Diddy's, and we go, da, 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 and he's so funny, and that's what you think about this. You know what I'm talking about. And it doesn't just happen at a big level like the Diddy's or the Epstein's, but it happens at a smaller level. It happens at a smaller level. Somebody comes up and buys your daughter something nice, and next thing you know, she thinks he's a good catch because he has resources, or maybe he gets sucked in. Men get sucked in all the time. Men get destroyed by this. Like men, well, women too. Don't get me, but men get destroyed more so in terms of losing your reputation, losing your family, losing your wealth. Just go to Shannon Sharp. Go talk to Shannon Sharp about it. Because I would say for Shannon Sharp that you can never trust a big butt and a smile, but I saw that girl and she got a white girl booty, so I don't even know what it was that he was chasing after right then. But still, though, either way, it's going to cost him $100 million because all of his business deals that he was going to receive, a lot of them pretty much disappeared. His sponsorships, all that stuff kind of disappeared because unfortunately for a black man, just being accused of something is enough to destroy the trust that people have, which I think is unfair and it's wrong. But it's life. It's also life. So anyway, so here, which speaks to another point I've made before, that and your son should really hear this actually, is that a man who can't find some degree of sexual discipline, right, is probably going to lose all his wealth. Like it doesn't mean you have to just sit there with your tail between your legs and not enjoy life and enjoy the fruits of your success, but you have to have some guardrails. You have to have some degree of discipline. You cannot be a person who says, because it's there, I'm going to take it. You put food on the table, I'm going to eat it. Some of that food is going to be poisoned, right? And so sexually speaking, I think that there's a part, and I look at hip hop when I look at this, right? And hip hop culture is not black culture. They didn't. That's not black culture. That's that culture is created and controlled by the people that run hip hop. So they put it in that culture. They infuse the poison to make these young guys just think that, okay, if she's pretty and she wants to sleep with me, I'm supposed to do it. And if I don't do it, I'm a punk. Something's wrong with me. And that's just a terrible way to think, right? You have to know your worth. You have to know your value. And one of the biggest things we talk about when we talk about wealth is protection of wealth. I did a whole training. It's what is it? Stormproof investing. Stormproof investing. I broke down all the different ways to protect your wealth. Right? That's stormproofinvesting.com if you guys want to go look at it. But one thing we did not get a chance to talk about that day is that a big part of protecting your wealth is choosing who you associate with. It is choosing who you let in your life. I mean, I want you to think about, I think just recently, there was a young brother, I forgot his name, but he played in the NFL. He went back home. He's kicking it with thugs. He gets shot. You know, why are you kicking it with thugs getting shot? Oh, because you're trying to keep it real. I don't want nobody to think I've changed, but you have changed. You know, you signed a $50 million contract and they didn't. So it doesn't mean that you're better than them. It just means you have a different set of priorities now. You got something to protect. And so because you have something to protect, you shouldn't be in spaces with people that have nothing to lose. My father actually was the person that told me that. I told you my daddy was a gangster, but he was a cop. But cops are kind of like gangsters because that's why gangsters and cops. If you watch what's this guy's name? I forgot his name. He's the former mafia guy that has a great YouTube channel. I forgot his name. I love Michael Francis. I'd love to talk to this guy. He reminds me of my father. And Michael Francis is so cool to listen to because he literally he just has this really great common sense way of looking at the world because he's seen things. He was a very powerful mobster and he's flipped that in a really positive way. He's like a white version of kind of like how Malcolm Little, like Detroit Red became Malcolm X and he was such a better person because of that. Well, he kind of did the same thing, except the white people version, where he's giving lots of good advice to young men that they need to hear. And it reminds me so much of my father. And it's funny because my father was a cop. This guy's a gangster, but cops and gangsters actually have a certain amount of respect for each other. That's kind of like, yeah, I get it. I understand why you do your job, and you understand why I do my job, and I understand why you're my enemy, and you understand why I'm your enemy. But that doesn't mean we hate each other. It just means our interests are conflicted, right? So Michael Francis, he's a guy that has given great advice, particularly to young men about things like gambling. He made millions of dollars from getting people to gamble and then going and breaking their legs when they didn't pay. And the biggest thing Michael Francis says to young men is do not get involved. He said the thing with the mob is we always give you a choice. He said we tell you like, hey, look, if this ain't for you, don't get involved. But some young dude, college student, whatever, who needs money or who thinks he knows everything, is like, no, 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 I really want to do it. And then they get in over their head, and then next thing you know, they have leverage on you, and then you're point shaving or you're committing a federal crime in order to pay back the mob boss, and you end up going to prison or getting killed or whatever it is, right? This is he explains this, right? And I think really if you have a son, you should have your son listen to some of these stories so that maybe he won't be such a knucklehead. But with that said, though, um, well, I remember my father telling me, my father, the gangster who was a cop, who could have probably been the head of a street gang too, but the cops are a gang. I remember him saying that if you have something to lose, you shouldn't be in spaces with people that have nothing to lose. And when you build your wealth, as you're making your investments and making your money and growing your generational power, you're gonna have something to lose. So when you have something to lose, you can't be in spaces with people that have nothing to lose because they'll get you doing stuff where you lose everything, they'll lose nothing. So this is why, to some extent, when you get your wealth, you're gonna have to be a little bit protective. Some people might interpret that as being snooty. Ah, well, you done changed. Well, yeah, I have changed. You could have changed with me, but you chose not to. Well, you think you better than everybody else. No, I don't think I'm better than everybody else, but I do have more to protect, so therefore I cannot move the same way you move when you don't care about yourself, when you don't value what you have. Maybe you don't value what you have because you've been convinced that you have nothing. I don't think that's true. I've explained to you how a person can be very wealthy even if they have no money. But if you don't see the wealth, then there is no wealth. If you don't see it, then it doesn't exist because it's very psychological. But I see my wealth, I see my worth, It's very clear to me that I have something to protect. Therefore, I'm protecting this. And not only am I protecting what I have and what I built, I'm protecting what I'm going to have in the future, because what I'm going to have in the future is heavily dependent on what I do now. And I value myself the same way you value a stock. See, if you go look at certain stocks like QBTS, the quantum company, you'll find that QBTS makes almost no money. If you go look at Oklo and you say, well, Oklo, that stock, that company is worth billions of dollars in the market. How much money are they making? They got to be making at least half a billion a year. The people at Oklo will be like, no, we don't make any money. Well, do you have assets? You got to have like maybe a few $1 billion worth of property or something. No, no, no. We just have ideas. We just got a plan, right? That's crazy. That's crazy. But that's how the stock market works, because their wealth isn't just in what they have or what they've built. The wealth isn't the more of the wealth is in what they're going to build. Do you understand? That's where the wealth is at. So for a lot of you, you may not have nothing yet. Especially if you're young and you're in here, you may not have what you're going to have. But if you see what you're going to have and what you're going to build, then that makes you a very wealthy person, because your wealth is just locked in your potential. And you got to protect that. When I was 22, I was broke, like a lot of 22-year-olds, but I was gaining my self-esteem and I knew what I was going to go out here and accomplish. So because I knew these things, there were certain things I just did not do. I did not know I'm not going to sit around and drink with you, because I don't want to ruin my brain and my body with alcohol and do something stupid that'll get me locked up. Um, I can't sit and waste time with you because I got work to do, because I got to keep investing in this future that I'm trying to build. Um, I'm different, and it wasn't me trying to be arrogant. See, that's the thing. We get mad at black people that have high self-esteem. We really do. We really get I thought about this today. I actually talked about this for a second on I have a second Instagram channel called Dr. Boyce Money. If you go to Dr. Boyce Money on Instagram, you can watch the video if you want. But I said I thought about the time, and I'm gonna get back to the Epstein thing, I promise. But this is a financial conversation. I hope it's okay. Is it all right that we're just talking? I hope that that's okay. I don't want I don't want you to say, well, he started talking about the Epstein and the money thing, but I'm gonna get to that, I promise. But this is all a flow, right? And I want us to flow into this. So I remember that conversation I had with a high-ranking editor at Essence magazine years ago, back when Essence was much more powerful, definitely as a print publication. And I'll never forget when she explained to me that in Essence, we love the stories, we love comeback stories. We love the story about somebody who hit rock bottom and fixed their life, and then now they're on top. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, I mean, I thought about it. I was like, oh, okay, this is what Essence wants. Like, I'm writing it down because at that time, when I'm leaving Syracuse, it's like, oh, well, getting an article in Essence was a big deal. So I took notes, but I thought about it since then, years ago. And it's like, why does it have to be a comeback story? Like, why do we tend to identify mostly with black people who threw it all away and then got it back, and don't have much appreciation for the person who said, um, "I overcame my mistake by never making the mistake in the first place." Like, does anybody notice that? Like the best, most inspirational stories are like, he went to prison 15 years because he killed somebody when he was 18, and now he's running a company. Or she was homeless and now she's a CEO. or you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that these stories are not valuable and inspirational, but it's like, well, when do we graduate? When should we graduate and get to the point where we say, look, we don't want you to throw it all away and then have to catch up. We want you to get ahead and stay ahead in the first place. I think that there's a bias against that. I think that if you say, look, I didn't get shot in the hood, I didn't go through hell, I didn't go broke and get my money back, I didn't go to prison. I'm just a guy who thought about my decisions since I was young, and I made the right choices because I had good mentors in my family who wanted to make sure that I didn't have to go through hell in order to become successful. I think that there are people who really look at that and they're like, you ain't really black. You ain't black, because for some of us we think that being black means means failing or losing or coming from behind or being at a deficit. That's the what they call the deficit model. Like I think that I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but I feel like we are more attracted to those stories of struggle. It's always struggle, 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 struggle. And so you spend all your energy struggling, so you don't get to spend your energy thriving. You spend so much energy trying not to drown that you have no energy left to truly fly. You see what I mean? And so the less energy you spend in the struggle, the more you can spend your energy struggling in a different way. Maybe the struggle becomes like, okay, how I went from being a regular person to being like really successful, as opposed to like how I like in some cases these are what's the word? Not intentional, but these were choices that were made, bad choices. And I wonder how hard we work to study and eliminate bad choices so that you're not coming from behind. You're not trying to figure out how to overcome a 520 credit score because you never had one. You're not trying to figure out how to recover as a prison inmate because you didn't go to jail. Right? You're not reestablishing a relationship with your kids because you always took care of your kids, right? Like what about those black people who did that, who always took care of their kids, who always got a good education, who always worked hard, who always made saved their money from the very beginning? I'm gonna tell you, my belief is that we have a bias against those people. We kind of think, oh well, there's nothing interesting here, and we get all excited about the person who is in the pit of hell and climbed out of hell like that basketball player Sebastian Telfair who blew $20 million and now he's in the projects, like repairing his life, and everyone just loves this story and they're so excited about it and heaping all this praise. And I think that that's fine. He deserves that. I want to encourage him, but I also want to encourage the brother who made the 20 million and turned it into 100 million because he wasn't stupid enough to get caught up in doing a bunch of the dumb shit that our young black men are taught to do. Do you understand? Like that's not, if you're always seeing yourself as the loser, then you will never be the winner. If you always see yourself as the as someone who is simply trying to avoid losing more, then you'll never be a person that acquires more. So anyway, with that said, let's get back to the wealth and the Epstein thing. And what I'm really the dot here that I want to connect on that is choices, right? Just choices and how choices are something that has to be really thought through because I find that emotional reactions are what cause a lot of bad choices, like our desire to fit in or the inadequacy that we may feel, where we feel like we got to go along with the crowd or we have to do what our favorite rapper is saying to do, even though it's stupid. Like Cardi B right now, for example, is out here publicly destroying her life, publicly destroying her child. She's a very strong candidate for fetal alcohol syndrome, by the way, which my wife, as a therapist, can diagnose by looking at facial features and behavior patterns. She's trained on identifying fetal alcohol syndrome. She said, "Yeah, I think Cardi has it." And Cardi actually sent my wife a note in Instagram and basically said, "You'll be hearing from my lawyers." We didn't hear from the lawyers, so I don't know why. But anyway, but still though, it's and now I think she's having a baby with a guy who got 5 women pregnant in the same year, and which probably means that like this is how diseases and stuff get passed around. And but there's not really much discussion in terms of just saying like, isn't it weird that we have a community where people like in that space will get so much more energy and attention than the people who are actually making good choices? Because I think that we sort of have a gravitation toward that. We're like, oh yeah, your life is messed up just like mine, not healthy, right? So going back to, but remember, let's not make it a black thing though, because white people can be stupid too. So with Jeffrey Epstein and Lawrence Summers, let me just tell you what a badass Lawrence Summers was as an economist. As a fellow scholar, I have to give him his props. I read Lawrence Summers was such a badass. I read his research papers when I was in grad school at Ohio State. He's considered to be one of the top economic thinkers of all time. And I'm looking here. I made some notes. See, sometimes I can't find the notes I made, but I made some notes in terms of what he'd done. First off, he used to be the Secretary of the Treasury. He was the chief economist of the World Bank. He won the John Bates Clark Medal, which is basically like the Nobel Prize in economics for anybody under 40, but you got to be young to get it. He got it, and Roland Fryer, a black man who's at Harvard, got it. Roland Fryer is the one that got in trouble. I think he was messing with them white women. I think that's what got him. He was served as the director of the National Economic Council, which is a big deal. He advised President Obama. He taught economics at MIT and Harvard, and he was the president at Harvard for a while. And he did a good job for the most part. Now, he didn't do a perfect job. I know Cornel West. When I talked to Cornell about Lawrence Summers, he did not have a lot of good things to say about him in terms of his respect for Black studies. He felt that Lawrence Summers did not appreciate Black studies. But but what's interesting, and so he kind of reflects that white liberal that doesn't really like Black people that much, but kind of likes them if they fit a certain mold of thinking. But he really wasn't one who they felt was a champion or supporter for what they were doing in the Black Studies department. That was, and in fact, I think Cornell felt that there was deliberate disrespect there. And I like Cornell West. I brought him in. He's one of the few people I bring in this space because I this is a sacred space to me. And Cornell's just one of the best human beings I ever met. With that said, so here's what happens. So how does this guy who's accomplished so much get tangled with Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein becomes Epstein? Well, between 1998 and 2008, they Epstein gave about $9 million to Harvard. Now they have billions, but $9 million donation is not chump change. One of the largest single gifts was about 6.5 million they received in 2003, and so he was appointed as a visiting fellow in Harvard. So in 2005, even though he didn't have any academic qualifications for the most part, because money will kind of open that door for people to just receive credit that they don't deserve. And this is why you got to be real careful about getting excited about people getting awards or whatever. Not to say it means nothing, but in many cases, it's not a meritocracy. The world is not a meritocracy. People that write big checks, they get big benefits. And or as Project Pat said on his last D1 song, "Big blessings. I'm sitting on some big blessings." He said like he has a real deep voice. I don't know much about Project Pat, but him and D1 did a song. I talked to D yesterday. I love this guy. But anyway, with that said, so with the big donations, you get big blessings. And so the big blessing he got was he was a visiting fellow at Harvard and he had access. Now remember, there's a lot of evidence to say that Epstein was Israeli intelligence. I cannot imagine that not being the case because everything this guy did was out of kind of like this playbook for manipulation and blackmail and influence by basically using economics as a tool for power. Economic warfare, again, very real. Economic manipulation, very real. Black people should be aware of it just because that's been a tool that's been used to manage and control Black people for a very long time. A lot of your most prominent Black people, your so-called fake Black leaders, are really just Negro managers. Like they're paid money by someone to get Black people to line up and do something, whatever it is, buy a product, vote for a certain person, whatever, right? And so anyway, so Epstein, another thing that they said in the email disclosures is that let me see here. There were new email disclosures that showed that Summers and Epstein corresponded about Harvard and linked projects, personal matters, and donor prospects from 2013 to 2019, which means that they maintained their relationship behind closed doors. Even after Epstein was, I think he was arrested for soliciting prostitution from a girl underage or something like that. And so he was convicted in 2008. Harvard still declared it. Well, sorry. Here's what happened. So they declared that they would accept no more money from him, right? So that was their public statement, and they stated that any remaining unspent funds from his prior gifts would be redirected to support victims of sexual assault and human trafficking. Well, the thing was, out of the 9.1 million, they only had about $200,000 left. So they're like, yeah, here, you can have the chump change left. We don't want nothing to do with this guy, right? But the bulk of the money apparently had already been used. Now, here's the thing: Harvard could have easily wrote a check for 9.1 million. They spend that much money in less than a week. But it's like, well, giving back money is kind of hard to do. And I think that they were more about saving face. So Harvard's, their president, Lawrence Summers, despite all this, was still connected to Epstein and talking to him. And, I guess Epstein was helping him bag chicks and stuff. And so the question would be, how could this really brilliant man get caught up in such a ridiculously embarrassing situation? Like, what is it, what happened here? This guy, he was he was a candidate for the Nobel Prize. He's one of the smartest people on the planet. I remember reading papers by Summers in grad school. And this guy was legendary in the field of economics. So how in the hell did you kicking it with Epstein? Well, there's something in behavioral psychology called reciprocity bias. So one way that I imagine Epstein manipulated Summers, as well as all the other people. I mean, this is the thing. This is what makes the whole Epstein conversation hilarious to me is when they really open up them files, they're gonna find a whole bunch of people in there, mostly men, and it's like Epstein was just a master manipulator and using his money and power to get people into compromising situations. I don't think, I mean, I just feel like, and because here's the thing, they were targeting specific people. They were like, okay, you're powerful. We're going to come after you. Hi, my name's Jeffrey. I got $1 billion in the bank. Do you want to be my friend? And I want you to be honest with it. Raise your hand. How many of you, based on whatever it is you're trying to do, you're starting a business, you're trying to make investments, you're trying to make a move. How many of you, if a person literally came up to you and said, I got $1 billion in the bank and I want to work with you and write you a check, how many of you would probably take that phone call and probably consider taking that money? Come on, be honest. Put a yes in the chat, and don't be in here lying, talking about like, no, I wouldn't take no money. You can stop lying. Quit lying. I'm playing. I'm messing with you. But well, maybe you would now because we thought about these things. But really, most people would. Most people would, especially if he's a nice guy. And remember, intelligence agents are master manipulators. Right? That's how when they interviewed the black guy who infiltrated black organizations on behalf of the CIA, they said, "Well, how did you get them to trust you so much?" He said, "Well, it's easy." He didn't cite the law of reciprocity, but that's what he used. He said, I just offered to be helpful. Like whatever they needed, I would be helpful because it creates another phenomenon they call the halo effect. The halo effect is when somebody's generous, they love bomb you with money or attention or time or compliments or access to something that you need, then you somehow subconsciously believe, oh, this must be a good person. And next thing you know, you be out here vouching for somebody that you barely know. And we've all fallen for it. We all have fallen for it. Not just, now, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about us. Okay. So you, me, all of us. I can't tell you how many times I, as a 40 something year old grown ass man, can think of times where I was like, damn it, Boyce, you're too smart for that. You knew what was going on here. And you ignored it because you wanted to believe that this person was a good person because of blank, 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 right? And so it happens to everybody, but then it becomes very costly. Now, in the case of Epstein, I think it's scary because he was really trying. I mean, Epstein was really trying to accomplish a certain political goal, right? I think that's why every single congressman ends up pledging allegiance to Israel because there's stuff there, right? Right. Um, Now, with that being said, let's move on with this. And you can imagine other scenarios where money is used as a manipulator, particularly when it comes to like women. I heard Corey Holcomb, the comedian who apparently we beefed for a little while. I wasn't beefing with him. I don't beef with nobody, but sometimes people beef with me. He was mad at me, but he's like a mutual friend, so I'm gonna be nice. But he talked about when he's kind of an honest guy. He's funny and he's smart, but he's damaged. But again, because we made up, and I'm not trying to be mean, I remember him saying something interesting where he said, "Yeah, I will." He said, "I sleep with women that I don't care about, or something." He said, "And what happens is I will give you an amount of money that is a lot of money to you, but very little money to me, and then I get whatever I want." He kind of said it like that, and again, he says things in a very raw sort of way, but there's like an element of truth to that. And there's so many people who, and I think that culture does this, right? If you listen to a lot of music, you will hear, rappers say, look, hey, if you have money, then you can have all of this. And I think that that's just kind of a strange way to look at things. But what happens is with the halo effect is that when somebody's generous or when you see someone that appears to be successful, your brain assumes that the person is trustworthy, smart, or morally sound. That's what the halo effect basically says. So you meet the man or woman of your dreams, or the friend that you've been waiting for with money in the bank who can support your business or whatever. You will just automatically assume they're a good person. And so even smart people fall for the halo effect because it's not built on your intellect, it's built on emotions. So anyway, moving on. Reciprocity bias is when somebody gives you money or benefits, the human brain feels pressure to return the favor. So this is what Harvard did. Harvard got the money from Epstein, they returned the favor. Lawrence Summers did too. There's also something called the principal agent issue in finance. And what this kind of means is that when Lawrence Summers was interacting with Epstein, he wasn't really interacting on behalf of Harvard in sort of an ethical way. He was supposed to be representing Harvard, but he really wasn't. He was really representing himself. And, the stuff that he would consult Epstein about, like how do I get this girl to sleep with me, that ain't got nothing to do with Harvard. I'm sure the board would not have approved of that. So this sounds like it was something that was more of a personal kind of thing. But of course, with him being the president of Harvard, it's going to reflect on the institution. Um, there's also something called utility maximization bias. And what does that mean? Well, this comes out of what they call economic decision theory, that basically says that people naturally seek the greatest benefit at the lowest cost. You seek the greatest benefit at the lowest cost. Everybody want to go to heaven, but don't nobody want to die. Everybody wants the harvest, but no one wants to plant seeds. Everyone wants the benefits. Nobody wants to sacrifice. I mean, I want you to really think about how many people you know. Tell me, let's reflect on this consciousness exercise. How many of you know a lot of people who say, I want to have a lot of money, but when you ask them, well, what are you doing to have a lot of money? They can't really answer you. They're making no sacrifices to get money, but they think money's magically going to appear out of the sky. They say, well, what do you want? Oh, I want to be rich. Okay, well, how are you going to get rich? I don't know. Well, what are you doing what are you doing different that's going to make you rich? Nothing. Right. Like that doesn't make logical sense. But utility maximization theory says that inherently as humans, we kind of want it all and we want it fast and we want it now. And we want it easy. Like, and the Gen Zers, you guys fall for it quite often. I can't tell you how many times I've met 24-year-olds who think they should be the CEO in 2 weeks. Because they just, it's like, no, why should I sacrifice? I should have it now. One time I had 15 years ago, there was a young lady that wanted to intern with me, and she was a Spelman student. She was a sophomore. And I talked to her, and I said, so what are your goals? And she said, um, I'm gonna be as rich as Oprah Winfrey and as successful and as famous. And I said, really? I said, that's a pretty big goal. I said, okay. And she said, and it's gonna happen in 2 years. I said, what? She said, yeah, I'm gonna do it in 2 years. And so me, I don't want to be a hater. I don't want to be like a dream killer. I'm already enough of a hater, but because I say stuff that makes people mad. But I don't want to be a dream killer because who knows? Maybe you can do it. But I was like, well, you do know it took Oprah a long time to become Oprah be as rich as she is. And she's like, yeah, but I can do it because if I put my mind to it, I can do anything. I was like, okay, that's Spelman confidence, right? I don't know many Spelman graduates who are not successful women. So whatever they got in the food, I approve of it. It's they inject it with confidence, and I think that that's what makes Spelman special. But if you're talking about trying to become the next Oprah Winfrey in 2 years, that's going to require quite a lot of a sacrifice. And and as you can imagine, she didn't become Oprah in 2 years. She actually got pregnant and dropped out the next semester. And I saw, but I did see her like 15 years later, and she's raised a really beautiful child, and she's doing well because she's a Spelman woman. So even if you fall off the horse, you can still get back on. But still, though, I thought about that in terms of like what set your expectations? Like, do you understand that the most rewarding gifts tend to have the highest price? The most valuable outcomes just require the highest price to pay. And so if you're not thinking about the price, or if you're thinking about the reward more than you're thinking about the price you're going to have to pay, then you're probably at a deficit. I learned from really successful people watching them that you can't just be in love with the goal, you have to be in love with the process. And that allows you to perhaps train yourself to consistently commit to doing the things on a day-to-day basis that are going to get you that big long-term prize that you're looking for. But the reward isn't just in the prize, it's the little reward of knowing that you worked for the prize that day or you made the sacrifice that day. And what I have also found is that the most extreme rewards, financially, success, or whatever, tend to have a price that's so high that you're at risk of what is called the winner's curse. And the winner's curse is where you won because you paid the price, but later on you find out that the price was too high. Like I wonder if Michael Jordan feels like he was hit by the winner's curse. I don't feel like I don't look at Michael Jordan and see a healthy, happy human being. I see a man who looks kind of sad and he looks like he may not be super healthy. And he kind of became the greatest athlete on the planet by being a little bit of an asshole to a lot of people. And it's got I'm sure it tainted his spirit on some level. Family fell apart. His son's out here getting into all kinds of situations and stuff. And I wonder if he could do it over again, if he would have paid a lower price and said, okay, instead of winning 6 championships, I might only win four, but I get to be a legend, but I get to keep my family, I get to keep my health, my mental and physical health, I get to keep some of my friends. I don't know, right? So a lot of times you got to watch out for that winner's curse. Ambitious people have to watch out for that. Like never, ever, ever attach yourself to your love of an outcome before you fully reflect on what the cost is going to be and whether or not you're willing to pay that price. So, again, going back to utility maximization bias, because everybody wants the world, but nobody wants to sacrifice for it, shortcuts become very tempting, right? So, shortcuts. So what's an example of an economic shortcut? Well, I know lots of black people who got rich overnight because they started taking money from the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, right? They have all this power and wealth, and they drop a bunch of money on you and give you a big platform, and you say, "Look, mama, I made it. Look how famous I am." But then one day you wake up and you realize that they gave you those resources because their goal was to control you. Or maybe a young lady who says, well, I don't need to go to school and get educated and build wealth for myself. I'm just going to go find a guy that has lots of money and just attach myself to him. I'm going to marry an NFL player, NBA player. And then next thing bad things can happen. When I wrote Financial Lovemaking, when I was at Syracuse, I spoke to a lot of women who had the dream, like dream husband. They married the rich guy. And it ended up ruining their lives. One lady was like, "Yeah, he gave me diseases. He beat me up. He spent all the money. He got on drugs, and now at 35 years old, I have to move back with my mother in New Jersey, and I have nothing. I'm starting over with nothing." And remember, she was a person who lived the dream. She lived the fairy tale that everybody wanted. And unfortunately, you gotta look your gift horse in the mouth a little bit, right? Fairy tales are very dangerous. And so, with that said, I would say that what utility maximization bias I think should do the awareness of that should lead you to understand that sometimes going back to what I said before, all money ain't good money, and sometimes a certain path, the easy path may not be your path. And sometimes and typically I have found that there is no shortcut for true wealth and true power. A lot of black folks, we get the fancy jobs, we get the, corporate sponsors, we get the DEI money or whatever it is, right? And and we forget that the person that has the power to feed you also has the power to starve you, right? And so then when they cut the job, the good job, when they cut the DEI money, when they cut, when the political party's not happy with you anymore and they cut your funding, we freak out and we go into this extreme financial anxiety and this economic stress and this woe is me, it's so hard being black when really there was another path for you to achieve real power. But the reason we might not have chosen it is because it's like, well, why spend 5 or 10 years building something when you could just be, flashy and exciting in 6 months, right? When you could be the hot Negro in town, because you got the right job or the right opportunity or the right whatever. And this is something that's really dangerous. This is what the job seeking culture does to black people. I'll never forget. I got furious when I read a black publication that wrote an article about Tamron Hall. I think that was who they were talking about. Who they said Black history was made when Tamron Hall was the first black correspondent on the Today Show or something. And I said that's not Black history. I said because when you tell me that that's Black history that a Negro got a job, I said what you're telling me is that black people don't make black history, white people make black history because black people didn't choose her for that position. Someone else did. The person that owned the company chose her. So that's great for her. She deserved the job. That's great for them. Maybe it's white history, but that's not black history. Black history is not built by people who simply got propped up. The puppet doesn't have any power. The puppet master has the power. So, or the proximity to power is not real power. Like this lamp I have appears to be powerful. It's very bright, it's very shiny. You can see it, right? It'll damn near blind you if you stare at it for too long. But this lamp does not have any power. This lamp is plugged into the actual power source. So one of the things that I think constantly cripples us as a community is that we don't even understand what power looks like. 9 times out of 10, there is no substitute for the acquisition of real power. There is no substitute for the time it takes to build something. You build an institution that's very different from running an institution. You might be picked where they pick you up like this freaking Bucky's doll, and they pick you up and they prop you on top of the institution, and you're the big shiny Negro on top of the institution, and you say, "Look at how much power I have." You don't have any power. The people that put you in that position are the ones who have power. They're just letting you borrow their power. You're the manager of the company. You're not the owner of the company. Do we understand the difference? Like, there's a difference between the two. So the shortcut may seem to be the one that works the most. And I love Bucky's, by the way. My mama loved Bucky's. So when I have the Bucky's, when I miss my mama, I hug the Bucky's doll. My mama always had a smile like Bucky's. So that's why it reminds me of my mama. All right. So let me put Bucky over here because he didn't ask to be brought up in all this drama. He's like, man, what you got me? Put me on. Did you get my permission before you put me on TV? All right. So anyway, with that said though, proximity to power is not the same as having actual power. And I think the utility maximization effect, especially in a culture where the bright shining Negro is the one that we celebrate, the one that's on TV or the one that won the award, or the one who got the good job, that causes us to miss out on what real power actually looks like. Um, with that being said, the last one is there's something called social capital dependence. And so wealthy people can offer more than money. They offer a lot of access, proximity to influential donors, things that strengthen your social status, stuff like that. They give you a lot of clout, right? So you get into these elite circles, and what happens is the trappings of the elite circles that you got to be careful about is that once you're inside the circles, people are very reluctant to sever ties, right? So you get into the group and then somebody in the group does something crazy, a lot of times people are just reluctant to walk away from the group. That's the social capital bias, right? So a lot of times, so what Epstein's fall did that was really, I think, probably uncomfortable for a lot of his rich friends, his elite friends, is they were like, damn, like we can't even talk to this guy anymore. Like, but Jeffrey was the hookup. Jeffrey had the plane, he had the women, he had the money, he made the big donations, and that literally is that was the trap that Epstein set. And Lawrence Summers falling into the trap speaks to the fact that he had very powerful people that fell into that. Like I wouldn't be surprised you saw. I bet you every nickel in my bank account that he knew Bill Clinton very well, right? I bet you that he knows Donald Trump very well. I bet he probably even had some. I wonder if he knew Barack Obama at all. Like I don't know, right? Because what we know Harvey Weinstein did, right? So the point of all this is to say that that's an age old thing, and it's funny, right? Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein. It's like the Steens can leave the stain. That's those are bars, right? Like so that's kind of interesting, right? Like the Steen and I don't know. It's kind of a common thread of financial manipulation, financial warfare, money being used as a tool for control and power and influence. And so it doesn't mean you shouldn't form your alliances, but it does mean that one thing you can maybe learn for sure is in what is it with wealthy people, wealthy families. One thing really wealthy families do when they're protecting their wealth is they hire like private investigators and they do background checks on anybody that comes in their circle. This is what like when you get well when your wealth eventually for a lot of you when your wealth is really high, like some of you are going to have wealth of over $500 million one day, $100 million, and you're trying to protect that. You have to kind of watch everything. You got to watch. Your son comes home with some girl, and he's like, "I'm in love. I'm gonna get married." Wealthy families are like, "Okay, so who is this young lady, and where did she come from?" That they just do it, and it's not because they're being snobs. It's because they're like, hold on, we're not gonna let you, let your penis cause you to lose $50 million of the family's money. Do we need to make adjustments in the trust to make sure that you don't have access to too much money? Because being addicted to this woman could be like you coming home with a crack habit. So ultimately, at the end of the day, this is just the way the world works. When you build your wealth, you're going to have to protect it, and you got to be strategic and thoughtful and logical and careful with your decision making. And I say this as a person who doesn't on any level pretend like I've got it all figured out. Because again, Lawrence Summers is a very smart man, but men cannot outsmart their masculinity, if you will. That you cannot outsmart your penis. Women cannot outsmart their vaginas. Those are smarter than you. That's just life. So you have to find some other way to get around that. All right. So I didn't mean to say the word penis and vagina. Some of you have your kids here, but it's about time we have the birds and the bees conversation. All right. So let's go ahead and finish up for today. If you haven't, if you're not on the text list for this class, text the word morning to the number 87948. Text morning to 87948 on your phone. I'll let you know we meet every single morning at 10 a.m. And also, don't forget, Friday night, we're doing the financial slumber party. And that's going to be 11 o'clock at night. We're going to meet late at night and have fun and play music and play games. And we're going to learn how to invest properly during an economic storm. That's the training we're going to do. I'll have slides ready and everything in the slides will be yours. You can keep it for life. And also, there is a small fee. But if you're a member of the Dr. Boyce Stock Market Program, you can actually get in for free. And if you're a member of the Prime program, you can get it for free as well. So drboyceprime.com or drboycestockmarket.com if you want to do that as well. All right. And what else is going on? Something else I meant to mention, but I forgot what it is. So it doesn't matter. But yeah, somebody says it's not a class, it's a rap session. Man, that's what I should call it, like financial rap sessions or something. Like, I don't know, maybe that, because that's what it is. I think conversational. Let me ask you. So let's just start there. Okay. Did you learn something today? How many of you would say, give me a yes in the comments, like if you feel like you learned something today, if you have something that's gonna stick with you and carry. Okay, and I want to know that, and I'm gonna do a formal survey because I know that my teaching style is different. I know that because I think it's fun to just have a conversation. I think that's better than me just preaching and being like, well, do this and look at the slide and here's how you calculate it. Like that stuff's good, but I think just talking about it is, and that's something I deeply believe in. If you just make something part of your natural discourse, your natural culture, it doesn't have to be formalized. The stuff that you have to learn at school, basic stuff about life, you shouldn't have to go take a class to learn it. You should be learning it within your environment in a way that flows more naturally. Like because money is so important. And how in the hell is it that with the importance of money being what it is, that we can go through life and never get any formal training and feel like, oh, I never took a class on money. But the universe is giving you a class every day. Am I lying? Like, I mean, really, life is a class, right? When it comes to money and stuff like that. When it comes to money, relationships, physical and mental health, your life is already your class. You're in the freaking classroom right now. You're learning the lessons right now. So I like the conversational style again because that's how my father taught me things. He never preached to me. He would just tell me stories and stuff, and that's a lot easier than like feeling like you got all this pressure to take a test on it. Okay, but because believe me, I know you're gonna get the test because you get the test every freaking week. I'm sure when you got to pay bills and raise kids and get through this world. All right. So God bless you. Have a great day, everybody. It was great to see you. And I look forward to seeing you soon. I'll send you the link later on today to join the financial slumber party if you haven't signed up yet. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everybody.